Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Bava Kamma 105, and today's Daf Yomi is dedicated for Yeshua for Am Yisrael, Hatzalah for the Shvuyim, and a Shmira for the Holy Chayalim. Today's Daf Yomi, we're going to start on 105a, 8 lines from the top. Mishnah had said that if you waived the principal and you said, you don't have to pay me back except if it's less than a shava pruta, that part I'm not waiving, then the person doesn't need to travel all the way to Medea to pay back less than a pruta. So the Gemara now, even though it's from the principle, so the Gemara now qualifies this. Amar Papa, Lo Shanu, when do we say that you don't need to travel to Medea to pay back the less than a shava pruta? That's only in the case she'ein gazela kayemes, where the item that was stolen is not in existence. Of gazela kayemes, but if that item that was stolen is in existence, then sarach leilech acharav. Then he needs to travel after him, even to pay back this half pruta. Because why? Why does he need to go travel to pay it back? Haishina and shema tiyaker. We have to be concerned. Maybe it'll go up in value. I was thinking that this is a very big Mr. Haskell, because sometimes people say, "Oh, we could take this; it's worth nothing; it's penniless." But you don't know; it could go up in value, and maybe what you think right now, you're not doing anything wrong, you're not really stealing. Maybe later on it'll be determined that you really did steal. So we have to be concerned. Hashina and Shema Tiaka. We have to be concerned. Maybe this will go up in value, so return it now. Alternative version is Ika da Amri says not like that. Amar Papa Loshna Gazela Kayemes, Loshna Shein Gazela Kayemes. It doesn't matter if the theft is intact or not in existence. You don't need to travel after Medea to return it. We don't have to be concerned that maybe it will go up in value. So now, since the Gemara went into this type of question from our Papa, it goes back earlier. Normally, the Gemara descends like in time, but Rav Papa was after Rava. The Gemara gives an earlier question that Rava raised. Amar Rava Gazel Sholosh Agudos. You stole 3 bunches of vegetables, B'Sholosh Prutos, and the 3 bunches are worth 3 prutos. V'huzlo, and now the price of the vegetables dropped. V'amdu al shtayim. Now the price of the vegetables, the 3 bunches, are 2 prutos. Im hichzir lo shtayim. If he returns 2 of the bunches, chayav v'hachzir lo. He still needs to return to him the acheres, the 3rd bunch. Even though right now it's not worth a pruta, since at the time he stole it, it was worth a pruta. Therefore, he has to return to him and to bring it to him. The Gemara says Vitani Tuna, and we have a Tana who supports him. Tana Tuna. We have a Tana who's going to support this idea, and where we're going to learn it out from a Mishnah that we learned earlier on Daf Tzadi Vav. Because what did the Mishnah say? Gazal chametz v'avar lava Pesach. Let's say one steals a piece of bread, and then it comes the holiday of Pesach, and now after Pesach he has this bread. Even though you can't benefit from the bread, the thief is able to say, Omer lo harei shachol lefanecha. He's able to say to him, here's your piece of bread. Why is he able to say that? Time of the Isa be'enei, because the bread is right there. But Isa be'enei, but if the bread would not be there, afagav the hashto mamona, even though right now it's not money, kiven the meikara mamono ba'ishlume, since kiven the meikara mamonahu, since from the outset it was money ba'ishlume, you would have to pay it. Hachinami, also in this case, same case that Rava was teaching us. Also in this case, we're going to say the same idea. Afagav the hashto shava pruta, even though this vegetable is right now not worth a pruta, even the mikari shava pruta. Since at the beginning Since at the beginning it was worth a pruta, by shlume, he's going to need to have to pay it. So now Rava asks another question. By Rava, gazel shte agudos bepruta. Let's say you steal two bunches and they're worth a pruta. Achas me, and he returns one of them. Mao, what would we say? Mi amrina and right now he's stolen nothing. Do we say right now it's as though he's stolen nothing because there's not a pruta there? Odilma, halo hadar gazela. Halo hadar gazela, the ave gabai. Or maybe he hasn't returned the theft because it's still with him. Hadar pashta, but then he answered, gazela in kan hashava in kan. So then he answered, there's no theft and there's no return. So the Gemara says, wait 1 second. Gazela in kan, if there's no theft, hashava yeshkan, then he has returned it. So the Gemara says, no, this is what Rava was saying. Bava Kamma, afal pishe gazela in kan, even though it's not theft because he has less than a pruta, mitzvah hashava in kan. He has not fulfilled the mitzvah of returning the lost object. So, meaning to say, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah of hashava. He hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah of returning it. V'amar Rava, Hare Amru. What about the following case? Nazir shegileach. So we know that in Nazir, if he becomes tamei accidentally from dead body, or intentionally, he has to shave off all the hair from his body on the day he's purified. So let's say we have this Nazir that was cutting off his hair, Vishir Shtei Syros, and he left behind 2 hairs, so he hasn't cut off his hair. Also, he's not sufficiently cut off his hair, hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah of cutting the hair. So by Rava, Rava asks the question, Gileach achas, v'nishra achas. Let's say he cut one of the 2 remaining hairs, and then the other one fell out. What would be the law there? So has he fulfilled the mitzvah of cutting off the hair? What is it? Why do we need to know if he's fulfilled the mitzvah? Tosfos explains. And this will prevent him from drinking wine. His nazirus is still going on. He can't drink wine and he cannot come in contact with a dead body until he cuts his hair. So he's like the position that says in Nazir that the haircut is essential. That only afterwards can the Nazir drink the wine after he cuts off all his hair. Or else, alternatively, Tosfos gives another reason why we know this with respect to the mitzvah, because maybe he hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah of cutting off the hair. And this is a dispute in the 3rd chapter of it is a dispute in Mesechas Nazir and Perek Gimel Minin. Okay, so Gemara says, let's see, cuts off his hair, 1 hair falls out. So I'm like, Rav Achami Tivtu Ravina, Nazir Shegileach Achas coming by away. Well, was Rava bothered by a guy who's cutting off his hair 1 at a time? That's how we cut hair in general. That, of course, that's cutting hair, because when you cut your hair, you have left, and then you cut them off. You don't cut off all the hairs at exactly the same moment. Of course, it should be considered cutting off your hair. So Amarway, so the Gemara says, no, Utzricha could go in Shenasher Achas Man, Vigilech Achas Man. He's down to 2, and then he didn't cut off the first of the remaining 2, but it fell out. Mi Amrina, do we say under these circumstances, Hashta Mias Haleka Shir? Do we say, listen, there isn't 2 hairs there, and so therefore he hasn't fulfilled it. Odelma halav giluchi. Do we say, okay, there aren't 2 hairs, so therefore he's fulfilled the mitzvah of cutting their hair? Or do we say, look, this is not cutting the hair. Demikara hashir shtei saros, v'hashta kigilecho have saros. Because at the outset there were 2 hairs, and now when it comes to cut, there's not 2 hairs, so he didn't fulfill the mitzvah of cutting. Hadar pashta, he answered it, seir in kan giluch in kan. There's no hair and there's no cutting. Mar says he's saying kan giluch ishkan. If there's no hair, there is cutting. No achikamer afal pisha saying kan mitzvah giluch and kan. Even though there's no hair, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah of giluch. He has not fulfilled the mitzvah of cutting their hair. So now we have another similar question. Amarava, Hare Amru Chavis Shenikva. Let's say you have a barrel. We know that a barrel can stop the tuma, the ritual impurity of the dead body, from going from one floor to the other floor. And so you take this barrel that has a hole in it, usisamua shemarim, and you filled up the hole with like the dregs at the bottom of the barrel, and you put it over the window that's in between the two stories. And so therefore it saves the top floor from coming because you've closed up the hole. And so therefore the utensil is not able to become tamei because it stops it from going through. And so now what do we say? So Rava says, so now Rava asks the question, by Rava, agaf, chatzia, let's say you covered up half of it. So now you covered off half of it, so it's as though it's open, but it doesn't have the full space of opening. Or so do we say it's as though the tumah is going into the utensil, therefore the utensil is becoming tamei and it's not stopping anymore. So what would be the case? Isn't this our Mishnah? The Tanam we learned in the Mishnah, that if you have a barrel and you cover it up with dregs, then it stops the barrel from becoming tamei. So therefore it saves the house. Pakakab is mura, but let's say you filled it up with branches, you need to put like plaster around it, around the branches. If there were two sets of branches, you need to cover up the sides and in between the branches. What's the reason why it serves to stop it? Because you plastered it. If you didn't plaster it, why wouldn't it be efficacious? Why is it any different than where you covered up half the hole? So we see from here that if covered up half the hole, it's done nothing and the tumah gets in. The Gemara says, no, there's a distinction. They're not the same. There, in that case, the marach, kai, agav chatzia. By the case of the plaster, if you wouldn't plaster the branches, then it wouldn't remain there, it would fall apart. But in the case of when you covered up half of it, whatever you covered up with will remain. So now we have the following case. Let's say they said Gazal chametz v'avro Pesach. Rava said they said that if you steal chametz and then let's say you steal a piece of bread and then holiday of Pesach comes along, Omar lo hareishal chalafanecha. You could just return the bread after Pesach. So now Rava asked the question about that. Even though the bread is worthless, you can return it. So by Rava asked the following question: Nishbal of mahu. Let's say on top of kafayama base after the chametz was prohibited because Pesach came along, you swore that you didn't have the chametz and nobody stole it from him. Now, what will be the law? Do we say, look, the chametz is right there, and he could just return the chametz, so he didn't actually deny anything, because basically the chametz was right there and it's worthless. So what did he deny? Or do we say, me, I'm reading kivan di mignav by shlumale memona kakafrei? Do we say, well, actually, if that chametz would be stolen, he would have had to return to him the money. He wouldn't be able to give back nothing. He'd have to either give the chametz or money, and money has a value of what the chametz was worth before Pesach. So therefore, he's potentially causing him a loss of money, and so therefore, Mamona could cover away. He's denied the money, and he has to bring a carbon plus pay back the money plus 1/5. Odilma hashtamiya samanach. Or now we would say the chametz is there. And so there, it's worthless. And it's like dirt because it's worthless and he hasn't denied any money. And so since he didn't deny the money, he doesn't have to bring the carbon asham for lying under oath about something that he stole. So the Gemara says, Milsati Baile Rava, Shito Rava. This matter, which Rava was unsure about, Rava had actually given a clear ruling. The Amarabba, but I should note, okay. So the Milsa the Rabba Pshita Rabba the Amarabba, Rabba says the following case: Shori Ganafta. This man says, "You stole my ox." Fu Omer Lo Ganafti. He says, "No, I never stole it." Ma Tivo Etzelcha. So they say, "So what's that my ox doing with you?" He says, "Yeah, it's your ox, but Shomer Chinamani. But you are, but I'm watching it for you. I'm doing you a favor. Shomer Chinamani Olav. I'm watching it for you." We're going to say under those circumstances, and he swears, and then he admits afterwards that he swore falsely. So we say under those circumstances, chayiv, that he has to bring a carbon shvua, even though he admits it before, even though he admits before the shvua about the money, he still has to bring a carbon. Why? Even so, what's the reason why he has to bring a carbon shvua under those circumstances? Because by being a shomer chinam, because he says because by saying he's a shomer chinam, even though right now the it wasn't stolen, he's made himself potentially exempt if it would be stolen or lost, like a shomer chinam. And so therefore he's and since he's a robber who's really is a robber, he's responsible for if it's stolen or lost. But since he's potentially exempt from that, that was his oath, therefore he has to bring a carbon. Let's say he says shomer sachar and yolav chayiv. Let's say he says actually I was a paid watchman. He's going to be responsible. Why? Because a hired watchman is exempt from death, or is exempt from onus, from death or breaking. He says show on Yelav. He says I was a bar or a chayev. He's going to be also responsible. So he's because the bar is exempt if it dies during the normal course of work. So we see from here afagav kayim that even though the animal is right there, given the mignav, since it's the potential for him to owe money, because if it would be stolen in the case of the shomer chinam, Mamona kafar, he's denied money, he has to bring the carbon. Hashtanami, so too, under these circumstances, Mamona kafar, under these circumstances, he in the case of the chametz, he'd have to bring the carbon. And Achanami, Afagav the Afar Ba'amu, in this case, since it would be, right now it's not worth anything, given the mignav, since if it will be stolen by a shlumalei, you'd have to pay it back, Mamona by a shlumalei Mamona Ma'alya. Since if it will be stolen, you have to pay it back real money. So now, so he's denying money and he has to bring the carbon. So Yosef Rabba, the Bach changes gears to Rabba. So Rabba was sitting and he said this teaching. He repeated this halacha that if the guy claimed he was a shomer chinam when he wasn't, since he potentially was saving himself money in a case where it was stolen, therefore he has to bring the carbon. So he said this teaching. So Rav Amram Rabba. So Rav Amram challenges Rabba. If he denies it, Prat Lamoda Beikar. It says in the Brisa, one who denies under oath is responsible to bring a carbon. This excludes somebody. This comes to say, when are you responsible to bring a carbon? If you completely denied the chomesh and the asham, completely denied the chomesh and the carbon, but if you admitted to the main aspect of the claim and you just deny the details, then you're going to be exempt. Ketzad, Shori Ganavta, if he says you stole my ox, and he says no, I didn't steal. What's it doing with you? You sold it to me. You gave it to me as a gift. Your father sold it to me. Your father gave it to me as a gift. Achar parasi rats and I was running after my cow, and your cow just appeared before me. Toa b'derach mitzasif, I found it wandering, or shomer chinamani, or I'm a free watchman, or shomer sachar ani alav, or I'm a paid watchman, or shol ani alav, or I'm a borrower. V'nishba v'hoda, and he swears, and then he admits he swore falsely. Yachol yechayev, I might think he's going to be responsible to bring the carbon shvu under those circumstances. Tamalomer v'chicheshba prat l'moda beikar. It says one who denies it. This excludes the case of somebody who admits to the main thing. So therefore, in that case, we said specifically that the shomer chinam, if he claims shomer chinam, is exempt. So why did you say if he claims shomer chinam that he's responsible? So that's what Rav Amram asks Rabbah. So Rabbah responds, Amrei Tadura. Tadura says, Rashi says, Ein Leiv. Now, some people might say, Ein Leiv in modern Hebrew is a heart, but in Talmudic Hebrew and Rabbinic Hebrew, it means a mind. He says, you don't know what you're talking about. You're imprecise. Kitanya, that brisa which says that in the case of that you're exempt, if you say you're a shomer chinam, what are we talking about? That's talking about a case to Amrei Helech, where he's basically saying to me, here's your cow. And therefore you can't say, oh, if it will be stolen, then you would have been exempt from paying double, then you would have been exempt from paying it back, because here it is, go take it. So we don't have to be worried about it being stolen. Kikamina, but when I said that you have to bring a carbon, what was I referring to? I was referring to a case, the kaima ba'agam, where the animal is not there, it's in the swamp somewhere. So now the Gemara is going to go through those cases and see why you are exempt. Atam machartoi, you sold it to me. My moda beikar, he says, you sold it to me. Isn't he totally lying? And the Gemara says, well, it's true. We're talking about a case. I never paid you for it. You sold to me, but I didn't pay for it. Shakil torech v'zil. Take your ox and go. What about the case of atana tatoli? Excuse me. Atana tatoli or avicha nasnuli. You gave it to me, or avicha nasnuli, or your father gave it to me. My moda ikar. Why is that also a case where he admits to it? He's completely denying it. He says, no, you gave it to me. So the Amrei Amanas Davinucha Nayach Tanamshe Bo Abdilcha. Because he says, no, you gave it to me on the condition that I'll do a favor for you, and I never did it. Shakil Torech V'til. Then take your ox and go. Toa B'derach Mitzasif. So he says, I found your ox wandering on the road. Lema, let him say to him, you should have returned it to me. So Amar Avu Dishmul. So Avu Dishmul explains, no, that case was referring to Pomer Shvua Aveda. Omer Shvua Aveda Matzati. So what are we talking about? A case here? What does Shmuel's father say? Omer Shvua. He says, I swear to you, Aveda Matzati. I found it. I didn't know it was yours, that I have to return it to you. So now we go up to the next case. The next case of the Gemara, since we talked about returning a lost object, where the robber claims that he didn't know who it was, the Gemara brings us a tangent, the types of oaths about a witness who saw a person who found the lost object, and he swears to the owner of the lost object that he swore falsely that he doesn't know any testimony. And what's the law? We know in general that if a person knows testimony and then he swears he doesn't know it, then he has to bring a carbon asham. So now we say in the Brisa, Tanya Amar ben Azai, Shalosh Shavuosein. There are three laws with respect to oaths, with respect to a witness who swears that he doesn't know testimony about the lost object. The first is Hikirba. Let's say that the witness recognizes the lost object, but he doesn't know who found it. He recognizes the object, and like, for example, he sees it in somebody else's courtyard, but he doesn't know whose courtyard or who it is who found it. B'motza, let's say he recognizes the one who finds it, and he doesn't recognize the lost object itself. And the third case is lo bav lo b'motza. He doesn't recognize the person or the object. So the Gemara says, wait. Lo bav lo b'motza kushta ishtaba. Well, if he doesn't know the lost object or the person, well, clearly he swore truthfully when he said he didn't know anything. So the Gemara says, ema bav b'motza. No, he knows the person and the lost object. That's what we're referring to. Lamai Hilchasa, what did Ben Azai mean when he said that there are three oaths? What does he mean? So Rabbi Ami Amar, in the name of Rabbi Chanina, Liftor. That in these three cases, the witness is going to be exempt from bringing a carbon, Shvuas Ha'edus, because the testimony does not relate to money. Because since he's only one witness, then one witness cannot make somebody pay money. Shmuel Amar L'chiyuv. Shmuel says no. In these cases, he has to bring a carbon shvua because since one witness could require other people to bring an oath, and then maybe he wouldn't take the oath and he'd have to pay. So therefore, that would be a case of potential money, like we've been discussing before. Therefore, he has to bring a carbon. And this dispute between Rabbi Chanina and Shmuel is the same dispute about the following brisa that we see between the following Tanaim. The Tanya, we learned in the brisa, Hamashpia Eid Echad Pater, that a person comes, and so let's say one witness comes and says he doesn't know testimony. The guy says, take an oath. He swears falsely. Pater, he doesn't have to bring a carbon. Like Rabbi Chanina, that since he's just one witness, he doesn't have to bring the carbon shvua. Because one person cannot make another person pay. Rabbi Shimon says chayev because one person can make the other person take an oath. So therefore, if he denied under oath that he knows testimony, he's going to have to bring a carbon shvua. But Micah Miflagi, what's the argument? So Mar Savar, Rabbi Lazar, and Rabbi Shimon who says you're chayev, they say davar agarmu mamon kamamon dami. That they say that since he could potentially cause this person a loss of money, because if the guy won't take an oath, he'll have to pay. So therefore, it's considered like a testimony about money, and so therefore he has to bring a carbon. Umar Savar, whereas the Bava Kamma and Rabbi Chanina say he's exempt, because they're of the position, Mamon agaram mamon lav kamamon dami. It's not like money. Okay, we'll stop here, and God willing, pick this up. If anybody has any questions, happy to address.